This is meant to be a relaxed space where you all are welcome to bring your lunch. It's past dinner time for our special guest today, Cristiano Bottone, who's tuning in from Italy. Thank you so much for being with us, Cristiano. I wanted to just share a little bit about why this topic of municipalities in transition is so exciting and important. Transition US has been doing a strategic planning process for the last 2 years, interviewing and surveying many people involved in the transition movement and partner organizations across the country. And a lot of folks have expressed this desire to grow our work through partnering with local governments, that is in fact one of the most important ways to scale our work and grow our impact. And I was hoping to get a show of hands, just how many of you are already, first of all, how many of you are already active in your local government in some way? Great. And how many of you, your local transition group or grassroots group that you're involved with, partners with your local government in some way? Awesome. And then how many of you would like to start partnering and collaborating with your local government? Wonderful. Great. Well, very happy to have you all here today. And again, you're welcome to introduce yourself in the chat and to eat your lunch. And now I'm going to introduce Cristiano. He, in 2008, co-founded the first Italian transition initiative in Monteviglio. In the same year, he brought together with another group of national experimenters, Transition Italia, which is now the national hub of the transition movement in Italy. Much of Cristiano's work focuses on the involvement of municipalities, businesses, and institutions in the transition process. And we thought we were also going to be joined today by Ana Huertas, Cristiano's collaborator from Spain, but she is with her little one today, which we completely understand. As Cristiano described the baby boss. Yes, we know that's how it works. So the main aim of the Municipalities in Transition project that Cristiano will be telling us about is to develop and test a structured way for municipalities and local governments to connect with their communities and respond to the great challenges of this historical period, adopting a systemic view and methodologies inspired by the Transition Towns movement approach and learning. The Municipalities in Transition framework draws case studies from Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Brazil. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Cristiano, who's going to give us a presentation, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions and discussion.
Thank you, Marissa. Hello to everyone. So nice to see you from some different places in the US. So what we are trying to do this evening is to go through this kind of methodology that we developed and see how we get here, where we are at this stage of this development. And I will go through the presentation first, and you will have time to make questions. And if you are very good and quick, we may also try a little bit to use the methodology just to do a little game with that to see a little bit better how it works somehow. But maybe we don't have time for that. Let's see how it goes so far. So as Marissa was saying, I started in 2008 the first transition initiative in Italy, and by chance we started since from the very beginning to work with our local administration, and not only with the local administration, so the municipalities, but also we were very well connected with the regional government. And that was a very particular experience, because since from the beginning there was this problem to plan together, to take responsibilities together. and to decide together. And there wasn't that dimension where you can say, okay, if they were with me, everything would have been different or so on, because we were all together. So no excuses. We had to face reality as it was, and that was very interesting. And this is somehow also the origin of this kind of methodology. So now I'll start to share my screen, and I'll try to explain to you what is this strange things that we created. So my English is terrible. So if you need, just stop me and I'll try to repeat, or I'll try to get help from Marissa to make you understand what I say. So the name of what we do now, so the name of the methodology is Local Transformation Toolkit. Now, this is completely new. This is a premiere for you in US. First time we are using this kind of name for what we do. And this is basically the methodology emerged from this Municipalities in Transition project. So we started from a very simple, or if you prefer, very horrible problem, which is, since we decided to cut down CO2, so at the moment we were really aware of the problem, our emission just have increased by 60%. So we are not very good in doing this kind of problem. So we decided to try something different, because what we had so far isn't so good, apparently. So transition was doing experiment around the world since 2005 in US, but in many other countries. And we worked a lot on doing stuff in the real world, and we learned a lot. So in 2017, somehow we were ready to pack everything together, all our understanding about what you have to do to make something real, to change something for real. And we had this opportunity to have this money from this private foundation from Denmark, and we started the Municipalities in Transition project. And basically, for the first 2 years, we developed the methodology, and we created 6 different pilots around the world to do experiments with the methodology. Then we collected all the understanding from this first round, and we went into a second round, which is finishing now, basically. And this was called the round of the pioneers, because the methodology was already stronger, more efficient, and we wanted to go deeper in what we could do with that. And now we have this package called Local Transformation Toolkit, which is something we can provide to a municipality, a community. Even we are thinking even now to provide sort of similar things to companies, to enterprises, because we see it can work in many different contexts. And before we started to design this, we went around the world and we analyzed 72 different cases of places where they were trying to do something similar, or at least they wanted to do something more organic, something more universal in their context. They wanted to try something more systemic, to see if there was something already available, because one of the first rules in transition is never reinvent the wheel if the wheel already exists. And yeah, in the end, we decided that there wasn't anything like the thing we were thinking about. So we carried on. And we started, of course, from the transition principle. Just a recap for those who don't know much about transition. We have these three basic principles that are quite important. And one is about the head, so use your head. And that means that everything we try to do, every process, every project, everything, every action should be based on the best available information about reality. So know about what we would like to see, not about what's our understanding of the world, but about facts, about available information that are good and solid. And this is the first step we take every time we start a new thing. But of course, humans are not made for that, basically. We are not computers. We are not based on logic, and we can be logic, but that's not our real main part. So heart is very, very, very important for us. So working with compassion, paying a lot of attention of all the emotional, psychological, relational aspects is very, very important. And in the end, what we know, what we see, is that the first two are well kept and performed. When in the end we move our hands, and we are very good in moving our hands, something good is going to come. So instead of creating more problem, we have a higher level of probabilities that we are going to solve the problem and to create benefit for everyone. So just to give you this information, every element, every ingredient that we put in the methodology is there to protect and to fulfill these principles. So sometimes, if you will start using this, you can find yourself asking yourself, why we do this way? And you can recall this information. We do a certain way, we suggest a certain way of moving because we want to protect and to see those principles really, really in our way of moving forward in this world. So let's talk about the methodology. There is a general problem talking about this methodology, which is all the ingredients are normally quite outside our cultural horizon. So many of the things we are talking about here are not known by people in general, because they are coming from very specific areas. Somehow we can call some bubbles that are there, maybe are very well experimented, maybe are very solid, but not very well known. So don't be surprised if at the end of this presentation, many of the elements will be not very focused, because normally you don't know about that, and you need to know more, and you need to do the experiment before you believe. So in a way, for some of the things, you at this stage you have to trust me, and we can't do much more than that. So let's see how we create the methodology. First of all, we wanted to provide to the community a sort of board where they can play the game. So we have this thing that we call the grid, and this is going to be the playground of the community. It's a way to understand better what's happening around you, how things are going to connect, and particularly being this a methodology really rooted in systemic thinking. What we wanted to provide was a very quick way to face a complex system without studying complicated theories about complex system. It is a big problem because theories about system are not so easy and are completely counterintuitive normally. So we wanted to have a way to simplify this kind of task. So we have this grid and we will see how it works. Then we have a governance model, which was very important because we are always talking about working together, being inclusive, and try to make good decision, wise decision. But to do that today in this world, with the level of competition, with the level of polarization, is going to be very, very tough. In real life is not something that you see happening very often in the end. So we wanted to have a very, very strong way, very, very safe way to do that. And that's the second element that we have in the methodology. The third element is a database, is a very particular, we call it different toolbox. Because when you move yourself into the systemic thinking universe, you really need good tools to do your job. And you really need the best tool for the job you have to do, to have good probabilities to have a good result. And this database works in combination with the grid. And then in the end, we have a number of people working with the methodology. So building up experience on the methodology and having this real life shock of the experience of using the methodology. And it's very, very important to connect all the people using the methodology, to provide a way to learn quicker, to feel in a safe space where you can talk about this with people that understands what you're talking about. The last ingredient is the tutor. What we know is that the methodology is very, very foggy at the very beginning. So what you need is somebody who is very expert and stay there with your community to help you to use it until you feel safe in the use of the methodology itself. So this is basically what we provide to a community that wants to start this kind of experiment, this kind of approach to solving our problem. So let's see, this is the grid. As you can see, it looks at the first sight a little bit complicated, but it's not so complicated. What you see is a number of columns, and every column is there to represent one of the actors that we consider important for every community. You may have differences in different countries or in different, but more or less we see we can cover what we need with this. So each one of this column is an actor. So column A is the municipality politician group. Column B is the municipalities organization, so technician, employees, and so on. C is all the controlled entities that you can find in the municipalities, suppliers, organization, businesses, public, and networks. I'm not going deeper here, but here basically you have the actors you want to observe in your community. And in this other level, so the horizontal lines are representing the categories of the action that you want to observe. And of course, you will have this all these cells, and a cell is the place where actors and action are doing something. So it's the place where you can start to evaluate what's happening in your community. And as you can see, we have some of the cells that have a different color, because those are some of the leverage points that we identified. So what we know is that when something is happening in one of the cells that has a color, that thing has a power which is higher than something happening in the white cell, for instance. So orange is more powerful than white, and red is more powerful than orange. So you start to have a sort of way to observe and design your community, and to start to have a map of what's happening in your community. The grid you are seeing here is a simplified version of the grid we are using now, but this is just to get the meaning. And what you do with this grid. So basically what we do is to form in the community, in the municipalities, a working group that should be ideally very, very diverse. So we would like to see people coming from different spaces of the community. So from the politician area, technical area, civil society, businesses, other institutional elements that you can find in your community. And we put them all together, and we give them a task in using the grid to basically get to this point. We want them to analyze and later design a systemic way to local action. So using this grid, we ask them to spot a number of actions happening in the community. Normally we start from actions that are already happening. So something that the municipality already planned, some projects that are brought by association or businesses, and to analyze the action using the grid and a number of other indicators that we provide to them. And what we know is, analyzing a reasonable number of action, you will start to have a complete picture of what's happening in your community. This provides also a very quick and visual way to start to understand better and to connect to the full picture of your community, as is normally quite surprising, because in our way to do stuff, we normally move in silos. So we have our bubble, we know our people, we know the people we like or the people we are in touch, and we don't have a very good understanding what's happening around and above and below what we are doing. So this creates a very strong possibility to spot potentialities, risks, and side effects of what we are observing, and later on what we are planning, for instance. It gives us a possibility to focus on leverage points and see what's happening in the leverage points. And also it gives us something that was very, very missing. So a way to evaluate in a simple and cheap in this case is economic, not very expensive way, what's happening in our community. Because very often we ask for information, for data, but getting data is very often very, very expensive. So we don't do it in the end, because we don't have the information we wanted to have, and we don't have the money to create a process to get all those information. And this way, you can create a very simple but meaningful picture of your community. We call it a baseline. a sort of a starting point. And also what you get normally is a better understanding of your community dynamics. And this again is normally very surprising because we tend to imagine that we know how things are around us. And very often we discover that things are not the way we were imagining. So let's go to the governance. To do all this, to decide about which action we want to analyze, which way we want to rank each action, to bring all these different people in the same room, we really need a very strong way to take care of this process. And that's why we are suggesting to use this two way of facing the problem. One is the use of this sociocracy 3.0, which is the last evolution of the sociocratic classic methodology. And it's incredibly revolutionary because it really changes the way you can deal with this kind of situation in the real world. Because we have a lot of theories about how to put people together and make them making good decisions. But reality is difficult. Reality is messy. Reality is complicated. And another thing, the people you get is the people you have. And this is crucial because very often we spend our time saying, okay, that guy is not very good. That guy has a secret agenda. That guy is this, that guy is that. This is reality everywhere in the world. No, that you can have places where you have a better situation and places where the situation is worse. But in the end, you can only have the people that are available, and you have to get the best from what you have. This is the way the world is working. So having a methodology which is extremely safe, and the more you have a diverse group, the more it gets safer, and the more it gets effective. It's a really, really important thing. And the other element, the other ingredient we are introducing here is this Canadian way, is a framework, basically, that really, in a very simple way, gives you a starting point for the process you are looking at or you are designing, reducing the probability of taking the wrong way. So I was saying, you maybe are completely unfamiliar to this kind of equipment. Probably, I don't know, maybe some of you have a little or a big experience on that, but normally it's not like that. But trust me, you have here something that really changes the rule of the game and make possible things that are normally very, 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 very difficult. So this is another important element. And so you have this group, you have a map of your community, and you have a very, very safe and effective way to make decision and to reason about what to do and how the situation is. This is a process, this is a methodology, this is a way to focus on sense making. Sense making is the problem of this era at the moment. If you are involved in academy, university, and everything else, you will probably know that there's a lot of talking about sense making, because we are really living in a strange world where everyone is following a sort of narrative about things, and it's very, very difficult to focus on what's the final meaning of what we do. No? What are we really trying to do here? And here you have a lot of elements that help you to focus on that. Then this is a way of focus on principles, those principles we were talking about, and on common good. So in the end, we are trying to do the best for everyone, or for the really for the most part of us. Erase or drastically reduce polarization, and this is very, very important. I think you have all the experience of social media, and you know how terrible can be to be in this kind of war of different opinions, and that really is a big obstacle when you try to make sense and to make good decision, because everyone goes on his way, and it's very difficult. And here you have a methodology to do this and to minimize the conflict. And this is challenging. It really gives you the possibility to distribute and to organize the power according to the meaning of the action. So you don't have to follow one or another ideology to decide who should decide, because it's the meaning of what you do that will bring you there, and you will see how to do it. It's like when you are in an emergency landing in a plane, you don't want democracy. You want the pilots do their best, and you don't want to put up a sort of meeting to decide which button we should press before an emergency landing. And in other moments, you really want the opinion of everyone, because that makes sense. And this methodology gives you this possibility. And also, this is quite new and quite exciting for me. This kind of process can let you bring in the decision-making process even not human entity, like trees or animals or one ecosystem, a river, and so on. We are developing a lot of new concept about that. I mean, there are rivers now that have the sort of a social legal status like humans, because that is going to be very important for the future. So here you have another possibility that is there for you. And once you have all these elements, those are very good aid for your process, then you have to decide what you do. And our database is there for this. One thing we discovered in the long years of experiments within transition is that very, very often we don't use the right tool. I mean, we follow, I don't know, a best practice that we read somewhere, or we just trust something that seems to be the right thing. But very often we are painting with hammers or trying to drive a nail with a sponge or stuff like that. So we created a database where we try to give to everyone the best we know about the tools that are available to do our very difficult job. So, for instance, we list many of the facilitation tools that are around, and we try to explain what you can really do with that, because very often we have legends, we have fairy tales about some magical tools that should do incredible stuff, and they don't. And the opposite, that we have tools that are completely forgotten and not considered when they are very, very effective. Also, we try to give a better understanding of technologies, bringing technologies outside the business as usual bubble, because now everyone is searching for a solution. And I suppose you too, every day you have on newspaper, in TV, a new magical technology that will save us all. And very often, yeah, they are not. I mean, they are just another version of the reality that we see. And we try to do our best to explain what all these new technologies or technology can really do, and which are the study you should read to understand better, and so on. And then we have the main problem, which is us. I mean, we don't function very well. Homo sapiens is not made to face this kind of systemic, huge problem that we are facing now. So we really try to to explain better how we work as individual and as a society. And neuroscience today give us a lot of good tools for that, to better understand how we make decisions and what we can expect from Homo sapiens, instead of pretending to see things that very, very often are impossible or nearly impossible. Also, we try to do a little bit of debunking on fake news, legends, and things like that, because very often when you start working with larger groups of people, you will face this kind of problem. And also, we are quite critical about many of the narratives around ecology and being green and so on, because also there very often you have very, very ideological approaches that we try to somehow put apart and going back to the meaning of things. So of course, in the end, we provide a lot of tools for systemic thinking, because we are very poorly equipped for that. Nobody really teaches us how to think in system and so on. And there are very little tools that are very good to use when you really want to understand a situation. So in the end, we provide a tutor. Why? Because all that stuff is different. Is not really complicated, but is very, very different from what we do normally. So until you really get into that, and we see people moving into that, everyone has a different speed in moving into that. But until at least the main group gets there, you need somebody helping you to stay within the mechanism we are providing. So normally we train tutor, and that's a quite heavy training. And we want the community to be assisted very, very carefully by somebody who knows how to move around in this kind of work. How a community can start? Well, normally we would like to see the commitment of the local government. Somehow we can explore many different possibilities: full commitment, partial commitment, good connection, let's see, and civil society. So we would like to see a starting group which is a little bit a sort of collection of the actors of the community. We would like to see there is a budget to support the activity. The budget ideally should come directly from the local government, from the local balance, but sometimes it's not possible, we know. And it can be a different source. It can be I don't know, financed by the general government. It can be private funding. Well, we can analyze different situations. We want to have this initial group ready to be trained. It is a very light training, but to start, you need to go a little bit deeper in those elements that I was showing before. And we want to have in place a tutor. And this is the most critical thing, because at the moment, we have a very little number of tutors, basically none in USA, for instance. So to start something like this in USA, we would need to do a training first for the tutor, because we don't have the possibility at the moment. And we suggest to have 1 year experiment at least. So program for 1 year at least. It might be that you will want to go for a 2nd year. But there is an important element here, which is all this is designed, like many other systemic tools, is designed to be useless at a certain point. So we don't want to create something that you have to use all the time. We want to create a way to move your community into a different cultural state. And when you get there, you don't need that stuff anymore because you know how to move yourself. And I can tell you that in my place, for instance, where we started now 4 years ago, all the people involved, the politician and everyone, we don't need it anymore. Well, sometimes we say, okay, let's go back to the grid and check this one because we want to really focus on that. We are confused. But basically, everyone is now thinking that way. So the reason and the scope of using this kind of package is to get to the point where you don't need it anymore, basically. So we can move the tutor to another community and start the process somewhere else until we have a number of communities that can connect, understanding each other. One of the problems we have at the moment, for instance, my municipality is part of a union of municipalities. And my politicians have big problems where they have to talk with the other politicians because they don't understand why they make a certain decision, or they don't want to follow a certain path, and they don't know how to explain, because of course if you don't get the full thing, it's very, very difficult to explain to somebody outside how exactly you got to that point. So this is what we ask for a local community. And now I know as a first run, it can be very difficult, but let's see if you have questions, and let's see if I can give you some answer and maybe also some example.
Thank you, Cristiano. I saw one question already in the chat, and I want to invite folks to either raise your hand, particularly using this, if you go to reactions, you can raise your hand there on the bottom. That'll be easier for me to see, or you can put your question in the chat. You can try just raising your real hand too, and I'll try to look for that. So the question from Mark Cooper in Washington was, what would you consider a reasonable budget for the project, Cristiano? And I don't know if you're able to do any conversions for us to US dollars, but we can pull up a currency converter if we need to.
Well, in euros, normally we try to, so there are different things, because what is really, really, really basic is the assistance of the tutor. So you have to provide a way to eat for the tutor, basically. And in Europe, this is normally about 25,000 euros per 1 year. In dollar will be a little more, I think, is, I don't know, $30,000 probably, something like that. And you should support the group in his work, and that can be money directly, but it can also be resources like space where they can meet, and assistance from I don't know, municipalities employee for the meeting, or other ways. And then you have the money you need to do what you are planning, or to support the action that you spotted, that you believe. I'm sorry, I'm very foggy, but that gives the right mood for the methodology. I don't know why my webcam decided to do like this, but I'm sorry. So normally the group can be supported quite easily if you don't have to pay for the time. They normally work 2 hours per week every week. So they meet 2 hours per week every week to run the methodology. Then there will be the part where they plan, but normally it will be in a joint venture with somebody else, with an association, with a business partner, and normally, at least in Europe, it's quite easy to find resources to do that. So to cover the cost of the action is normally something that the group does quite easily. So they go around and they search for possibility to finance the action. What you have to provide is the life support for the running of the methodology. So the tutor, the platform, we provide a web platform to make the work of the group easier. All the system is designed to be effective even with paper and pencil. You could do everything with paper and pencil, but of course it's much more painful. If you use the web platform, everything is easier, and the platform does a lot of activities for you, so simplifies your life a lot. But the pilot started with a very, very rough Excel document where they had to do basically all by hands. I mean, it was all manual. So basically, with around, I would say $30,000 it can be a starting point to run this. And of course, it can be extremely different in different places of the world, because of course, it might be nothing there, and it might be a huge amount of money in Colombia, for instance. So depending on the place, but basically to give you a sort of another way to plan for the budget. So the group is going to meet at least 2 hours per week for 1 year, and the tutor is going to work 2 days per week for 1 year, more or less. So you can convert this in your local economical situation and see how much you need for that. And ideally, we would like to see the money coming from the community budget, because I don't know in US, but for instance in Europe, we tend to do this kind of activities always with money coming from outside. And of course, if we always depend from money coming from outside, from an EU financing line or whatever, it will never happen at a big scale. You must find this kind of resources, which is nothing within your own community, basically. I hope I am.
All right, thank you, Cristiano. And we have a bunch of good questions for you. So first on the stack is Mary Jo. Go ahead, Mary, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, I was interested in how you listed the steps to take, because it seemed to me that it would be logical to have a sort of preliminary small group that would not necessarily include someone from the government, because here in my town, for example, I know that our government would not be, if you just went down to the government and said, we want to do this, they wouldn't do it. So I think there would be a necessity of having some planning to get the government involved in the first place. So that would seem to me that the trainer should come in and train a group that would not include the government at first, and then to teach them how to get the government involved and how to recruit the kinds of people that you would need for the combination of local government and civil society. And then once you did that, and you got your group together, then you could have the training. And then you could move into coaching. But I was just curious whether you have some particular reason why you have it stated the way you did: commitment of local government, budget, training, coaching, etc. That way, as opposed to the way I've just described it.
Because that should come before. If you don't have a good way to involve your local government, we won't give you a tutor. We have so few tutors at the moment that we prefer to start from places where you have good condition in place. But very often, get the government involved is not so difficult, because if you can't get the majority or the people in power, you maybe can get the people that are not in power. And that's a very good way to interest also the people in power. And being at the very initial stage of this kind of methodology and having such as ridiculously small amount of resources, if you don't have the right condition to start, we prefer to send the tutor in a place where there are the conditions to start. I know this is very sad, but this is the way. This work is horribly pragmatic. So if you can't get to the point to have them involved, yeah, you can start working on that. And the methodology doesn't provide a particular way to get them involved. I mean, it's something you have to imagine, knowing that you don't need the mayor. You don't need the politicians that are in power. You can start from the other, for example, for the opposition. You just need to have a sort of that kind of instance in the group to start. And sometimes you have the opposite situation. You have the government very convinced to start, and they have to convince the civil society. So yeah, that's the situation at the moment.
That's a great question. And I just wanted to mention there are many ways that local transition groups and other grassroots groups are building those relationships with their local governments on all kinds of projects, from drought to repair cafe to solar to food, all kinds of different things where those partnerships can start, and the local government can start feeling like there's credibility there and trust, and then a willingness to move into bigger projects. And we are hosting a workshop next Monday that's called Scaling Grassroots Action Through Local Government Collaboration, with the folks from Daily Acts. They are a people-powered group in California that work with, I think, more than 300 municipalities across the state. And they will be sharing some kind of best practices on local government collaboration. So yeah, that piece around building those relationships, it takes time and effort, but there are many ways to go about it. And we have about 6 minutes left. We have a number of questions. I'm wondering, Cristiano, do you have time to hang out a little bit longer?
Sure, no problem.
Okay, we'll just keep going through the questions, and folks are welcome to jump off when you need to, but there's some really good questions here, so I'd love to get to as many as we can. So what range of size of towns or cities in terms of population has this framework worked in, or does it seem applicable to? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it's a good question. So it was designed for the British town size somehow. No, that was the first idea. Then we tried in very different situations, like in my place is 30,000 people. Another place in Italy was 7,000 people. And we did it in one of the municipality of Rome, which was 1 million people. And we did it in São Paulo in Brazil. So we tried different approaches to see how this can help or if it was useless. And of course, depending on the size, you will see different effects, and you will analyze and you will develop different kind of relation with the action that you are analyzing. Because in a smaller place, of course, you normally have a much easier way to interact with something that you are observing, because it's nearer, it's easier, you know the people directly. In a very big city like Rome, very often you don't have this direct way to connect. And also Rome is a very, very confused, complicated, difficult environment. So you will see a different kind of evolution of the thing. But basically, it does something. It is a process, so it's very adaptable to different situations. Of course, you can expect different results, more direct in a smaller place and more general in a bigger place. You have a more general effect on the political, take the word in a wider sense, understanding of the situation in a place like Rome. They understand better what's going on in a general way, but they have less control on an interaction with an action they are analyzing or with an action they are planning. And you have a much more direct and a full way to interact in a smaller place. So basically, so far, you can use it with an interesting result in many different situations. But of course, we are at the beginning, so we hope to explore more and more and more, and to learn more and more. And also, every time we do experiment, we modify a little bit the methodology to really connect with reality, because we saw that in the beginning we imagined things that were so nice and so impossible, and after a while you say, okay, this is nice, but it's impossible. Just forget about it. This is not feasible now in this world. And we added things that we were completely unaware of, and we started to see that were very, very important.
Okay, thank you. Still more great questions coming in. And first, I want to ask you all to check out this little survey here about this session. I just put it in the chat window. If you could please take a couple minutes to let us know about your experience today, that would be wonderful. Okay, so a few more questions. One is, can you give an example of, I think it was a type of, well, there's so many questions in the chat. Could you give an example for using the grid? We'll start with that. And folks would like to see the grid again.
So, but we need time for that. I mean, I don't know how long are you ready to stay?
I was thinking another 15 minutes. Does that work for you, Cristiano?
Yeah, it was for me, but okay. So let's use the grid for a moment, just to. So.
Maybe your camera lens is clouded.
No, it's a very intelligent webcam that focus where she wants, basically. So, but I'm not so interesting to be your. Can you see the grid? So, okay. So we need something to be analyzed to give you a taste of how it works. So does Anyone has a project, very simple project going on to be analyzed? Something easy. Don't be shy.
I have one.
Okay, go.
Okay, the benefits of growing kelp in our local waters.
So explain the project.
Okay, we live by the Long Island Sound and a beautiful bay. Fishing industry is going down. One way to help people is to grow kelp, which also sequesters carbon and gives fish habitats and stuff like that.
Okay, sorry, is this already happening?
No, we're just starting it and we're having to get approval from the state.
Okay, so it would be better something which is already happening, but because in this case we should design the project.
Well, it's starting to happen, so. but maybe-
Okay,
but I don't-
so the first thing we do with the grid is to identify the place where this project is sprouting out, no? Which is the origin of the project. So who imagined to do this?
People who already are fishing, like oyster fishermen, oyster fishing people,
So they wanted to grow
seaweed.
okay. So they are in the business column, right?
Right, yeah.
They are doing business. So we identify the column where is the origin, and then we have to identify which is the action that brought there. So it's because they have a vision of the future. If it's because they have to reorganize themselves in a different way, is because it's more about planning a way to carry on, is because there are very strong technical evolution or motivation to do that, is because they want to connect better with other fishermen. So once you identify the column, you have to decide where to put the origin and in the sense of the action. What would you say about that?
Vision, I would say. Vision, number one.
So you think they started to think about this for a vision of the future. So how big could be the vision? How strong do you think this vision is when this project is starting? How strong can be the impact on the vision of others around them?
Yeah, it could be very big. It could be
very big. So the first thing we do is to identify the origin, and the origin seems to be F1. And then we rank the power of what we see, no? And you say this can be very big, no? This can be very, very substantial. So you have to give a rank that goes from 0 to 10. If the impact you are imagining is a good impact, so it goes in the direction of the principle that we stated before, it goes in the direction of the common good and so on. Or you go from 0 to -10 if you think the effort is going to be a problem, no? Creates something which is the opposite of what we want. So you start putting, for instance, in this case, we could say, we say 8, no? Is a strong, maybe we don't feel to say 10 or something so bold, but we could state 8. And in that case, we start putting an 8 in F1, okay? So we determined the origin of this single action. So, and now we can go through all the other columns to see if this action that is originated here can have impact on the other cells. For instance, let's start from the municipality column, which is the column A. As I told you, this is a simplified version. The actual grid is a little bit more complex than this. But anyway, and we start from A1. Do you think the vision of the fishermen will have an impact on the vision of the politicians at the municipality level?
Yes.
Yes. How strong can be this effect?
Oh, strong, I think.
So maybe we could put another 7 here, no?
Yes.
They will be impacted in a strong way. So as you can see, if we go through all the grid this way,
Mhm.
we will end up having some numbers somewhere, no? Because we go through each of these cells.
Yeah.
But of course, now we are asking to Margaret, which might be completely biased about this project,
Mhm.
no?
Yes.
Because she really loves this project so much, I don't know, or she really hates this project so much, no? If we do this with a group of people, with a diverse group of people, then when Margaret say, I think it will impact strongly on the political level, there might be somebody else saying, not so much. And in the end, we will find what is the general impression that we have about this. And particularly if you have your politician there, they will give their understanding of that, no? And the sum of the biases of everyone will create a map of this action. So in the end, we will have a map, and there are many other indicators that we have to check. This is only the grid, but there is more. In the end, for this action, you will have a map telling to you something about this action. And if you analyze 30 actions this way, in the end, you will have a map for each of the action you analyzed. And the system will create a map of the sum of those actions. And as you can see, everything is very not precise, okay? If you have an engineer in your group, it will be a nightmare at the beginning, because normally people coming from a very scientific background say they really suffer for this, because they always try to connect a number to something which is objective. And as you can understand, this is not very objective. It's very, and so what is important to keep consistent the way you give your evaluation. So you will create a culture in this evaluation group. And what is very important is to stay the same. So to keep the same piece. And the tutor will help a lot in doing this. And in a very magical way, somehow, in the end, everyone will be surprised or about how precise will be the picture of the community and how evident will be the dynamic going on in the community. Is very, very surprising. One thing that happens all the time with pioneers and the pilots, in when they send to me the full picture to be analyzed, and I give to them the analysis, because very often I don't know. I don't know about their community. I mean, it's completely a blind exercise for me. I don't know what I'm reading, and they always are very, very surprised by the exact picture that you can get from something that seems so, I don't know, so flimsy, so casual, so random, no, in the way you provide. Can you get a little bit how you play this game?
Yeah.
No?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, more or less. And what you can't get yet is all the consequences that you have, because you will analyze action that seems at the very beginning very good. And then you slowly discover that you start putting a lot of minus something. and there are a lot of problems, side effects nobody really considered at the very beginning. And all the group is in this position of starting to see all around. And when you start to see all around, you start connecting the dot. And when you have your baseline, so you have your full picture, and you start making projects, you really feel that you now have something to work with. And you really start to see where to put your little energy, your little money, because this is normally the way we move. We normally have few people, little energy, not the money that we need, and not the people that we would like to have in the group. And so it's so important to put all our possibility on something that really shines, that really makes for us this chance of really changing something. And so after the analysis of the first action, you find yourself in this state of clear view of what's happening. And you can start planning in a completely different ways. And connecting action is one of the most powerful things that you have, because you share energy, resources, and everything. And very often you have many different things working in the same direction without connecting, without sharing energy, without sharing the effort. Very often you have people, I give you a simple example, very practical. In my place, there is a regional natural park, and they were struggling to map on Google all the path available in the map without knowing that there was a private association of cyclists that already did the job. And they discovered this only through this kind of process, because they were completely disconnected one from the other. And this is a very small community. So in theory, you should find people very well connected, but very often it's not like that.
Okay, I'd like to take one last question before we wrap up, because Janice Lynn has had her hand up for a long time. Over to you, Janice, and maybe also I'll just share in the chat, we have the link for Municipalities in Transition website. There is, I believe, a Facebook group or page that's Municipalities in Transition. And you'll be receiving a follow-up email from this, or follow-up message via Mighty Networks with those resources and the invitation to take that survey. Thank you very much. Over to you, Janice Lynn.
Okay, so here's my question. First of all, let me just say that I live in a city of 166,000 people. So there's a lot going on all the time. And my question basically centers around ways of assessing the opportunity to do a big project like this. For instance, my city has some weak community engagement, or some community engagement, but it's weak and fragmented. Government and people are not well connected and moving in the same direction. Groups are siloed. There are some initiatives for climate change, but they are having trouble because of COVID disruption. People are leaving government leadership. And so a lot of this has happened because of COVID, I think. But supposedly crisis creates opportunity. And I'm just wondering, how does one assess if one city is even in a place where they can take advantage of something like this, even though they might need it?
Well, the situation you are describing is very, very everywhere, I think. So I don't think it's a problem of your place, but everywhere I go, I have people saying, oh, but where you are is all different. That's why you can do this kind of things. And everyone say the same. So, but the world is more or less like that at the moment. For instance, having this group running, when the COVID arrived here, put us in the condition to react very, very quickly to the COVID situation, and even help municipalities around us that asked help for us to us on how to solve problem. There was a lot of food problem here because big supermarket were in great difficulties. So we had to reconnect very quickly people to small shops. And in a couple of days, we created a map to do that, and we were ready to react. And the other municipality weren't in position to do the same, so we helped. So what to say? I mean, if you spot the possibility to start something like this, this is designed to try to solve or mitigate the problem you were saying. So people divided in silos, people moving responsibilities or guilt, no, to others is always somebody else that is doing the bad thing, and so on. But of course, you need a minimum starting point to put in place something like this. What we are experimenting and designing is a lighter version of the same methodology. We experimented this in Ferrara, which is another town in Italy, not far from where I live. And this is another approach, which is using a similar approach to just to face a single project. And this can be a way to get into the thing and to open this kind of understanding for people that are very far. For instance, this was a municipality governed by a right politician party, not very interested in the environment, not very interested in participation of people. And testing this with them was quite helpful because the politicians were little scared about going to that, and also the technicians were like that, and considering participation like something you have to do to appear a good guy, but you don't really care about. But using the S3 methodology, they discovered that the dynamic was completely different, because they expected to be in the same room with the same association, protesting and blaming them for this and for that. But this is not possible within this kind of methodology. And so in the end, they were cooperating quite well, and everyone, even the organization, were quite surprised by how different was this way of working. Because this is not about feeling good, this is about sense making. So in the end, you might still hate, I don't know, Jess De La Rosa. I hate him because I don't like him, and we were in the same, but in the end, we were there to do something meaningful for both. So even if I still hate him because, I don't know, because of his bird, I don't know, or the blue room or whatever, it doesn't matter, because in the end, I felt we were doing something useful for me, and he felt the same. And that's the change. I don't know if this is a good answer, but I think it's the best I can do.
For one thing, what you're describing, I mean, like, I'm involved in a food security group that looks like they want to go citywide. So what I'm hearing you say is the starting point could be a project like that to go into neighborhoods to do food security, something like that.
That could be if you are open to open the process to your enemy. That's the difficult thing. So when we talk about do things with the like-minded people, okay, this is what we tend to do. No, we want to work with those that are more or less like us. In Italy, we are very good in fighting even with those that are very well like us, but probably there are similar situations around the world. The point is, can I do that project really involving those that I don't really want to see in the same room with me? Because that is the point where you make the change. Can I work on local food production with the big supermarket around the corner, having them in the same group. That's a little bit the point. If I'm open to that, that's a possibility. So you could use that project with the light version of the methodology to see if you can introduce the topic, I would say, this new way of doing stuff into your system. That could be a way. No guarantee, but.
Okay, thank you so much. I think on that note, we should wrap up so we can release Cristiano and not keep him here all night. Really appreciating your time. Thank you so much, Cristiano, and everyone who participated to this very rich conversation today. And we will follow up. We can keep the conversation going on Mighty Networks.